So, hi everyone. My topic for today is all about representations of how we do things, a procedural knowledge. Some of the earliest models for representing procedural knowledge or how we do things come from AI and computer simulation research. Through these models, researchers try to get computers to perform tasks intelligently, particularly in ways that simulate intelligent performance of humans. The production of procedural knowledge. Procedural knowledge acquired through practicing the implementation of a procedure, and procedure is an action. So, procedural knowledge is knowing how to do something. So, the classic example of procedural knowledge is riding a bicycle. So, when someone was teaching you how to ride a bicycle, no matter what they said, you probably struggled to grasp it until you'd actually done it a few times. So once you figured it out, it quickly became implicit knowledge. So, in another way, procedural knowledge is not just merely a result of reading, hearing, or otherwise acquiring information from explicit instructions. Once a mental representation of non declarative knowledge is constructed, proceduralization is complete. That knowledge is implicit. Thus, this type of knowledge is hard to explain verbally, as it is subconsciously stored in your mind. Muscle memory is another phrase used to describe implicit knowledge. Psychologists have developed a variety of models for how procedural information is represented and processed. And each of these models involves serial processing of information in which information is handled through a linear sequence of operations, one operation at a time. One way in which computers can represent and organize procedural knowledge is in the form of sets of rules governing a production, which includes the generation and output of a procedure. For example, if the computer simulations of productions follow production rules, the if and then rules. The if clause includes a set of conditions that must be met to implement the then clause. The, the then clause is an action or a series of actions that are a response to the if clause. When the rules are described precisely and all the relevant conditions and actions are noted, a huge number of rules are required to perform even a very simple task. These rules are organized into a structure of routines and subroutines. So routines, it is the instructions regarding procedures for implementing a task, and subroutines are the instructions for implementing a subtask within a larger task governed by a routine. Many of these routines and subroutines are iterative, meaning to say that they are repeated many times during the performance of a task. And if you want to complete a particular task or use a skill, you use a production system that comprises the entire set of rules or the productions for executing the task using the skill. So let's proceed to the non-declarative knowledge. So non-declarative knowledge is that you are not aware of the steps you carry out when you act, and it is hard for you to spell them out explicitly. So this non-declarative knowledge is a knowledge that does not involve awareness and understanding of factual information about the world, including especially procedural knowledge. So, example of non-declarative knowledge is simple cooking tasks like boiling water for tea, riding a bicycle, or driving a car, buttoning and unbuttoning a shirt. So, those are the example of non-declarative knowledge. So, these are the forms of non-declarative knowledge. the perceptual, motor, and cognitive skills. The procedural knowledge includes hand-eye coordination, body-eye coordination, auditory language skills, and visual auditory skills. Second is the simple associative knowledge, the classical and operant conditioning. Example is that if someone puts their hand on a hot stove and hurts themselves, they may learn to associate hot stoves with pain and have therefore been conditioned not to put their hands on them. So the third is the simple non-associative knowledge, the habituation and sensitization. It is refers to a change in a behavioral response to a certain stimulus after repeated on continuous exposure to that stimulus. And priming. Priming is a fundamental links within a knowledge network in which the activation of information along a particular mental pathway facilitates the subsequent retrieval of information along a related pathway or even the same mental pathway. So, priming occurs whenever exposure to one thing can later alter behavior or thoughts. For example, if a child sees a bag of candy next to a red bench, they might begin looking for or thinking about candy the next time they see a bench. These are the types of priming. The semantic priming are primed by a meaningful context or by a meaningful meaningful information. Such information typically is a word or cue that is meaningfully related to the target that is used. As a result of presentation of a semantically related word, as when presentation of the word nurse facilitates access to or decisions regarding doctor. So repetition priming, a prior exposure to a word or other stimulus primes a subsequent retrieval of that information. For example, a cat and mouse are two words that are often linked with one another in memory. The appearance of one of the words can prime the subject to respond more rapidly when the second word appears. Thus, repetition priming occurs when a stimulus and response are repeatedly paired.